It's the second episode of the Footballer's Mindset podcast. In this episode, I've got England keeper and Burnley captain, Tom Heaton. He talks about the strange thing that he does on his Nintendo DS to get himself in state before games, and everyone's like, what's he doing? He also talks about his routines, who he had as his hero growing up, why Ronaldo was so good and what he does to make himself the best in the world. And the other thing is, and the big thing is how did he think and feel after he got left out of the team? He had a shoulder injury and he couldn't get back in. It's a must listen to. I hope you enjoy it. Please subscribe to this channel. Hope you enjoy it. Hello and welcome to the Footballer's Mindset podcast. I'm your host Rob Blackburn and I'm here to help you improve your game on the pitch by improving your mindset off it. If you like this podcast, please do me a massive favour, subscribe and give me a 5-star review, and I hope you enjoy the show. Hello and welcome to the Footballer's Mindset podcast. I'm Rob Blackburn and today I'm pleased to introduce to you England goalkeeper and Burnley captain Tom Heaton. Hi Tom, how are you doing? You alright? You good, mate?
Yeah, good, thanks Rob. Pleased to be here.
Are you sure? Are you sure?
I am, yeah, I'm sure.
He just said to me that he's got some penalty practice to do in a minute, so I can't keep him for too long because he's got to be going saving penalties. But how have you been? What's been going on? How did you find the season?
Yeah, it's been good. It was a turbulent one this season for me.
Yeah, I'm going to go into that.
Yeah, got back fit from the injury at the back end of last season. Obviously, it was an interesting dynamic with a large goalkeeping department. I wasn't in the team at the start of the year, so I had a few frustrations, but thankfully it came right. Got back in the team, enjoyed it, and I'm back in the England squad. So it's ended up being a decent season in the end.
So how did you cope without not being in the team? So we're going to go into how you think, how you feel, and it's to help youngsters to, when they get dropped or they're not in the team. How do you cope with that?
It's very difficult. You know, there's no easy answer to that question really, because obviously the emotional side of it, you're frustrated. Very often you don't agree with the decisions being made, and it's difficult. But I think you've almost got to try and peel that away. Be aware of it, of course. It's probably not going to go away, but you've got to handle it. You've got to deal with it, and get back to what's important. I think that's certainly what I tried to do. And for me, what I was striving towards was the next opportunity, and wherever that opportunity came, I wanted to be better. I wanted to be right on top of my game. So I was putting the work in, day out, bracing myself ready for that next opportunity, wherever it was going to be or whenever it was going to be.
So did you react in a positive way or a negative way?
I think I was a positive way in the end. I wouldn't say I was a positive way at the very start.
What was the thoughts at the start? What was your actual thoughts as you're not getting in the team? What was your actual thoughts going through that?
Frustration. I think the overriding emotion was frustration. I think you don't necessarily agree with the decisions that are being made, albeit it's the manager's job to make those decisions. That's part and parcel of football. So yeah, I think it was dealing with that frustration. And the problem is when you've got frustration there, it can often distract you from doing what's right, putting the work in, looking to improve, doing the right thing still. And I certainly fell into that to a degree, I think, early on. Not too bad, but certainly away from my usual standards. And I think, once that I sort of got on top of it a little bit, and I realised that the frustration was there. I found a way of parking it. It didn't go away, but parking it, putting it to the side, and making sure that I'm getting back to doing all the right things every day, which for me is what gets you playing at the peak of your performance and improving as well.
Yeah. So what's doing the right in your way? What's doing the right things every day? So what would you say that is for you?
For me, that covers everything. So that covers your sleep, your rest, your hydration, your nutrition. Then of course putting the work in the gym, putting the work in on the grass. Things aren't always going your way, but still hanging in there, still not chucking it, if you like. And as well, even if you've got a day off, getting away from it, that can be just as important. For me, that's still doing the right thing. If you can't let go, and I've found that a little bit in my career at times, that not being able to switch off can be as damaging as anything, really. So for me, I look at the whole lifestyle of it. It's not just the time you're in the training ground. It's the full shooting match. That rest in the afternoon, as I say, getting the right amount of sleep. That's pivotal. So yeah, it literally covers everything you can think of. Is what I put under the banner of doing the right things.
Yeah, I agree with you there. So saying so rest is massively important, and people underestimate what rest and recovery does. So some players who their missus want to go out all the time. They're like, no, you don't understand. I need to recover. I need to rest because it's going to affect my performance. So when you was frustrated, did it affect your home life as well?
Yes, it did. I think my wife would agree with that. She finds me an absolute nightmare if I'm not playing. Yeah. And I think it's a massive driver for me. Playing is a big deal. I left United when I was 24. I had the opportunity to stay. There was a contract there, but I knew that I wanted to go and play and forge my own career. And that's always been the same for me. The big thing for me is playing. So when I'm not getting it, it hurts, and I can be difficult.
Difficult in what way? So what? Tell me. Right, we're going to get into you now, Tom.
Yeah, it's, impatient.
Yeah.
Very short. Probably a little bit short fused. Moody to an extent.
Yeah.
All that sort of negative emotion can come out, and I think as I've got older, I've learned to deal with it a little better. But there's still some there, I think.
Yes.
And it's probably just because I'm driven so much to play. So when that's taken away, it can be difficult to control.
Yeah. So does your wife understand that, or does
she we've been together a long time. So she has a full understanding of what makes me tick. So in fairness to her, she's flexible with it. She understands. I think she understands how it works, why it's there. She understands it's not her as such, but she's also not shy in giving me a straightener if it's required.
So, as I said beforehand, Scott Shearer had a question for you, and it was one to do with regards to the Man United, as you touched on it there, just go into it, and it was like, how did you have the confidence to reject a deal for Man United to go to Cardiff? And was it the support systems around you, and what made you do
that? Possibly, I'll be the first to say that I've always had a very strong support network there. Parents, sister, my wife that I've been with for a long time. Some really good friends as well. So yeah, I've got a really rock solid foundation. But I wouldn't put that down to the reason of it. I think the reason the sort of confidence and belief is the fact that I knew what I wanted from day when I started out, really, and I didn't see that was the right path to get to where I wanted to go. So I knew that if I had to, yes, there's an element of risk in the decision. And when I made that decision, I had no offers on the table. I had no real interest at that moment in time. I was going into that summer not knowing what I was going to be doing. Yeah. But I knew it was a risk that I wanted to take. I backed myself. I thought if I wanted to gain something, there had to be an element of risk. So yeah, I made that decision knowing that I wanted to go and forge my own career or not, but I wanted to try. I didn't want to just keep cruising along, falling into the contract, but not doing what I wanted to do. I thought I've got to go and try it. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. I could live with that, but I wanted to go and try it. I think the worst thing for me would have been staying, as number 3 goalkeeper there. I'd been on the bench quite a few times as number 2, but without having that evidence of being able to perform at a high level, how could I ever go in and it's going to be very difficult to get the opportunity. It's not impossible, but very difficult to get the opportunity to go and play as number 1 at Manchester United. And for me, I wanted to be a number 1.
Who was the number 1 at the time?
At the time, it was Edwin Van der Sar.
Did you learn a lot of him?
Yeah, he was magnificent actually. Growing up for me, Peter Schmeichel was a massive hero, a massive inspiration. As he sort of came to the end, and I spent quite a lot of time with Edwin. And he obviously moved to United when I was there, Edwin, and he had some real good sort of comments to me and helped me with my learning and the way he was around the dressing room, in training the week, during the games, following him around for a few years, spending quite a lot of time with him. he was brilliant, and I've tried to add a few things from his game into mine. Probably the biggest being the air of composure that he played with. That spread through the team. There was never any panic, no matter what the situation was. He had a calmness and an assertiveness that had a massive effect on the team. So I've tried to add that in. I'm not sure how successful I've been with it, but I've certainly tried.
So who was your hero? Who was your hero growing up as a goalkeeper? Who did you look up to?
It was Schmeichel. Early on it was Schmeichel. I think as he finished and the sort of years going on, it became Edwin. Just because I was sort of in awe of him to some degree, just of how he went about it. So between the two of those, really, I think were who I certainly looked at.
Cool. Thanks for letting me know. That Schmeichel's one of my heroes as well. Always will be. The old star jump. You haven't added that into your game. Oh, you did. You did against Man United, actually. I remember that. Yeah.
It's
great tribute.
yeah. It was good.
That was a great
good day.
That one. You broke your arm though, didn't you?
Yeah, it was a sore one. It was that moment where you make a decision. I think it was Ibrahimovic sort of bicycle kick. The distance from him to the goal wasn't too much with his ability. I thought he was going to connect it clean. So I didn't think there was going to be enough time to react. So I thought I'd go and try and throw a shape. And thankfully, it hit me square on the arm. My elbow wasn't too pleased about it, but the ball stayed out the net, which was the main thing.
Yeah, that was a great save. That was a quality
Cheers.
save. So before we started recording, we was talking about routines, and you was talking about penalty routines. So do you have what routines do you have during your day to focus? So for example, do you have a wake up routine? Do you have a pre-game routine? Do you have a sleep routine? And if you do, what are they? So people can help and model you.
I'm quite a routine-based person, to be fair. I'm quite structured in how I go about things. I think what I would say to that is, I think you can almost overdo that, in my opinion. Now, certainly for me, I have a few structured things towards the end of the week, on a game day and probably the night before, which I stick to. But other than that, I try and be a little bit flexible. Mm-hmm. And even on those days, I like to try and get them in, but I also don't have them as superstitions. They're not a limiting factor. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. It's just what I like to do to try and find it. I think that's also important. I think if you're not careful, you can get too bogged down in the detail of it, and that can sometimes work against you. So for me, I always look for 9.5 hours sleep night before a game. Yeah, wow. So I've probably got in the habit of it over the years. I know that if I get those 9.5 hours, then I'll feel fresh. Yeah. I look for a full 8 on the Thursday night. 2 nights before a game. We've recently had a baby, so on Thursday and Friday nights I was in the spare room just making sure that I get a full night's sleep. Yeah. And it's important. I think it makes such a difference. I think it's an underrated thing, that sleep. I've mentioned it a couple of times already on here, but I think that is massive. So that'd be the first sort of part to it, really. Not overly stressful, but I'm aiming towards the 8 hours. On the Friday night, it's probably the more important for me to get the 9.5 hours in. And then I wake up on Saturday, if it's a 3 o'clock kickoff, a little bit of breakfast, nice steady morning, and then probably 5 hours before kickoff, I think, give or take, I start doing my little mental routine.
What's that? What would that involve?
It involves a little bit of breathing, a little bit of imagery. Finishes with a short little video clip, some highlights from things that I've done over the few years. And for me, it's just about getting myself into the right state to perform. Yeah. For me, if I can, we all wake up, even with me 9.5 hours, we all wake up feeling slightly different. Week in, week out. You can't guarantee that. You're not in total control of how you're going to wake up and feel emotionally, physically sometimes. But I think for me, once I do that routine, and it's been modified over the years. I modify it every season. I add things in, I take things out, but as a general, it stays sort of relatively the same. And there's a lot of different influences that have gone into that as well. A lot of books, a lot of people that I've sat down with, and it's my own personal one. It's personal to me, so I'm a big believer in everyone should have their own personal what helps them. But I think it's really strong in getting me in the same state on a match day every time. So no matter how I'm feeling going into it, I come out of that knowing that I'm in that performing state, and that for me allows me then to go and perform.
Yeah. So as we were saying before, your eyesight training your DS. So for people listening, like I met Tom when he was on loan at Wycombe Wanderers, and he pulled out this DS and he sat in the changing room and he started playing his DS, and I'm like, he's playing Mario Kart before playing. What is he doing? What is he doing? But it was actually eyesight training. So, and he still does it. So he does the DS eyesight training. So what reason do you do that? And who did you learn that from? Who taught you that?
Yeah, it was just literally trying to think outside the box a little bit. Looking to improve each and every part of it. I think. Sometimes we don't think outside the box enough. I'm a big believer in that growth mindset, looking to improve all the time. And for me, we had an eye specialist, an optician lady, Gail Stevenson, who used to come into Manchester United. It was absolutely fantastic. We used to discuss different things, and she once said, "Look, try this. You can use it as an eye warm up. Your eyes are a muscle; they need warming up and firing. Mm-hmm. You can do it every day to look to improve." And it stuck with me. It's something that I just added in. I just thought that it's something that I can perhaps gain an advantage on and improve if I keep doing it. Yeah. And I'm still sat here today, 15 years later, still doing it. The DSs have been lost a few times, so I've had to replace them and get them in from get a couple in from China and what have you. But I've managed to keep it going. And as you say, it certainly gets a few obscure looks across the dressing room when they think I'm playing Mario Kart, now before the game. But for me, it's something that I feel is going to benefit.
Yeah, definitely. As you're saying, like just getting the advantage, like the 1 or 2%. Can you improve 1 or 2%? Can you find something like, as you're saying about the pre-game routines? Like, as I say to players that I'm helping, try something, try it on. Does it work for you? Does it not? If it does, cool. If it doesn't, disregard it and try something else until you can come up with your own thing that you feel comfortable with, and it gets you in the right state to perform, like to your optimum level. So, yeah. So before that, as I said, you were probably ahead of the game than anyone I'd ever met with the eyesight trainer. So
yeah, I think you talk about young players coming through now. Whenever I speak to people, young lads at clubs or not at clubs, and they ask for advice and different things. The biggest thing for me is about taking ownership and responsibility of your career. Don't rely on a coach. Don't rely on a manager. Don't rely on a sports scientist. All those people can have influences, but it's down to you about what you do and where you go, and it's up to you how much you put in, and whatever you put in, I'm a big believer in you'll get back. So it's about what can you do yourself that's going to separate you from everyone else? What's going to make you better? What can you find that other people aren't doing that you can add something in and keep doing it and keep doing it? I think that ownership and responsibility. I think when I see young players, I often think they're reliant on what's put on for them. Go. You can do that. That's fine. But what are you doing in the afternoons to go and improve? You can go and have improve your tactical side of it. Whatever it is, you've got to find it yourself. But I think having some ownership and responsibility for that is the biggest thing that can help people be successful.
Would you say like stuff like self-improvement, reading, just constant learning and evolving, rather than going, do you know what? As we're younger, we go kind of like we know it. And it's having that, as you said, that growth mindset to go, do you know what? I'll never know it all. And I'm going to keep continuously learning and growing and continuously improving, rather than getting to like a certain age and going, well, I can't improve anymore. You can always improve. So like, what kind of stuff would you kind of read? What would you learn from?
Yeah, I've always been quite sort of interested in the mental side of the game. So for me, it's often been about mindset. It's often been about mentality. The book Grit I've recently read was fantastic. I've read a lot of those sort of books, things like The Talent Code and Bounce. Just that sort of, I know that's branching off a little bit, but that sort of idea for me is massive. I like understanding how it works. I did a little bit of work with Steve Peters. His Chimp Paradox book was really good. There's a lot of different ones that I've taken a bit from, and I've taken a little bit from each one. And I enjoyed it. There was a book, 10 Minute Toughness by Jason Selk, that I read a long time ago, which was probably one of the first ones that helped me with my my little sort of routine that I do on the day before a game. That little mental routine. There's a little sort of blueprint in that book that helped me start the ball rolling with that, which was excellent. So yeah, I like to try and go down that road of looking to see what I can add in.
So what would you do? So when you do the learning, do you listen to books or do you physically read them?
No, I'm more of a physical reader, actually. Sorry, I know I'm on a podcast here, but I have over the years, if I'm honest, been a bit more of a physical reader. I'm a little bit behind the times with the old podcast and that, but I'm starting to build it now.
No, but you're right. But people learn in different ways. So like I listen because I'm on the road. Like as I said, my fiance lives in Liverpool, so I'm on the road, so I can listen while I'm in the car, and then at night before I go to bed, I'll physically read. So and people learn in different ways. So like some people take in more through listening, some people take in more through reading. It depends what preference you've got. But afterwards, I'm going to give you a couple of little ones. You'll love if you haven't listened to it. Like as you were talking about sleep, and sleep's massive. It really opened my eyes. It's called Why We Sleep. Yeah. Have you read that one yet?
Heard of it, haven't read it.
Very good. And I was like,
okay, I'll have it a lot.
Wow,
yeah,
that's a really good one. So yeah. As I said, if anyone's listening, always look to improve. Like Tom said, like always read and learn, and then apply little bits, like the same as anyone does. Take out the bits that you like, try it on, apply that. That's great, and then move on. You don't have to take the whole book and apply it. Just take what you like. So,
yeah. I was just going to say, while I'm thinking of that, sorry, yeah.
Keep going. You're the talker. Yeah. Keep going. I want to get into your head as much as you can.
Someone once said to me about, and it stuck with me. It was a family friend of ours. You know, he'd been very successful in business and did a little bit of speaking and motivational speaking. And he said something that always stuck with me. You know, there's a lot of people that start out at football under 18, and obviously we all get sort of sidetracked with ourselves and thinking that you know, we're going to be that one, which may well be the case. You know, I'm not against that, but what are you actually doing to back that up? If you take your face out of it, you're just a body in a line. Yeah. So what's going to make the difference? You know, what's going to make the difference that's going to keep you advancing, keep you developing, evolving, leaving others behind? You know, he spoke about that pyramid. You know, when you start out, there's a lot of people, but as you get close to the top, it's even tougher to keep rising. So what are you doing that's going to make that difference? You can't just think you're going to be the one. You have to back it with work, with putting the work in, with evidence to yourself that you're improving. You know, I think we can sometimes be forgiven for watching football on TV or any top sport, and you think like, you know, he was often born that way. If you look at people's individuals' journeys, the top players have done more than everyone else. You know, they've put that work in. You know, I was fortunate enough to spend a lot of time, obviously at United. Cristiano Ronaldo came in. The work that he put in beyond what he was given at United was incredible. So beyond the training session, his own individual development was incredible. So what kind of stuff
would like Ronaldo do? Because we had Gilberto last week talking about Messi. And what would you? So he's played against Messi, and he said he was the toughest player he ever played against. Like the hardest, you just couldn't get near him, and he was tough, and you couldn't get him off the ball. So what would you say Ronaldo did compared to everyone else?
He, from memory, you know, would finish training, he'd take a ball off, he'd be doing laps of the pitch, quick feet with it for, you know, a long period of time after. He'd be doing short sprints up and down the hill. And then, if my memory serves me correct, he'd go home, and I think he had a gym in his house that he used to go and do a lot of gym work in the evenings. So he was just always doing more than other people, you know, even at the top level. Yeah. So to see what he's done in the game for me isn't a surprise, and it's not a fluke. You know, it's not luck. He's put that work in to get him there. You know, and that for me is it's actually good to see. You know, you see someone putting the work in, and what he's achieved. It's a real good evidence-based success story.
Would you say is the hardest work you've seen in the game?
Certainly one of, without doubt, actually, yeah. There's obviously been a few, and because he's obviously one of the top players ever, you know, he obviously stands out. You know, I remember the work they put in. But you've seen the other side of it. I don't want to name names. I remember you telling a story of another player who kind of didn't put it in. So he was. Did I? I can't remember that player.
As I
Don't
said,
name him.
No, I'm not going to name. I'm not going to name names. But like not putting it in. So the difference between, because like some people think they're entitled and they're going to do it and they don't need to put the work in. And I don't know if I was like click. You remember it was a story about a treadmill.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
You know
I think I know what you mean. But I think you get all sorts. When you're experiencing football, you get all sorts. You get different personalities. You get different characters. But I think for me, what underlines it is you might get away with that. You might get away with not putting the work in over a short period of time.
Do you though?
For a short period, you might get away with it I think in my experience, you might get away with it for a short period. Things are going well, but what happens when something goes wrong?
Yeah.
What have you got to fall back on at that point, or what are you going to take you on? That's what I mean. I think over a long period, I don't think you do get away with it. I've seen few examples where you might get away a short time, but certainly not over a period of time. So if you want to be consistently good and consistently playing at the top level, there's no shortcuts for me.
Yeah. You said there was, in the last sentence, you said there was that one thing what would you say that one thing is that people need to do? What is the biggest thing for you that makes a player unique? Is it the work on the training ground or off the training ground, or a combination of both? What would you say the biggest thing is that a player needs to make it today? Because we've got all the distractions of like social media, and you're not really on social media, are you?
No.
So that was another question. Is that because it's a distraction? Takes you away from your family?
Yeah. I think that time. I think when you got time away from it, you sort of don't really want to be on my phone, to be honest. I want to be spending time with them. Yeah. But the other side of it is, I think that the difficulty with social media is it's got a lot of opinions. Football's about opinions. But when you're performing inside it, and you're performing inside high-level sport, a couple of things come to mind. It's not always going to go right. Yeah. You have to be strong enough to know that it's not always going to be perfect. It's not always going to be right. So what are you going to do when it's not good? So for me, when things are going well and when things aren't going well, you only really want your trusted circle's opinions, because that's what can make you better or get you back on track or whatever it is. So for me, social media, in terms of how you view things and how your personality is, makes you fluctuate too high, too low. And for me, it takes you away from what's important. So for me, I've avoided it. We're all different. We all have different views on it. It's just not my thing in terms of, I just like to be singular-minded with my support network in trying to perform, and that's it.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. It takes you away, and then you have a bad game and you're reading all these comments and you're trying to stay as positive as you can, not bring negativity always into your life. Like sometimes you might get some nice stuff, but what's the point? Keep it out of your mind. People are too focused on phones, social media, Facebook, Instagram, and like I don't know if you agree with this. So I always say to some players that they're waking up and they're training themselves to react. So as a goalkeeper, you want to be proactive rather than train yourself to react. And if you react on social media or keep reacting to your phone and messages pinging, you're crossing over and you're taking that onto the pitch. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I do see what you're saying. I think, I just think it can, as I say, we're all different. I'm probably the extreme version here. So, but for me, it's a little bit like, humans want that sort of acceptance. They want that people to pat you on the back. But that's not why I'm playing, if I'm honest. Yeah. I'm playing to perform, and I'm chasing the performances. So, of course, we all like positive comments and what have you. But what are you going to do when it's negative comments? And with the best will in the world, it certainly has some effect on you. You can't hide it. If you read it, you see it. It's there. Even if you're strong against it, it's still there. So for me, I try and avoid it, both sides. The positive, the negative, and just literally stay strong through the middle of it. Hence, I don't do a massive amount on it.
No, I think that's a really good thing. I honestly think that's a really good thing, and it keeps you focused on what you need to be doing. Keeps you focused on time with your family. Keep you focused on your training. Keep you focused on your football, rather than being constantly distracted. And especially as a goalkeeper, you need to focus for 90 minutes. Yeah, like focus for 90 minutes, and then people can't even focus inside the car for 90 minutes because they're getting distracted all the time. Can you can you keep your focus just driving a car rather than sitting at lights and going like people going on their phones? Like it crosses over. It crosses over. You got to train your focus. Train your focus off the pitch, and you train your focus on the pitch.
Yeah, I can see that. I can. But we're all different. You know, we all work differently. I must stress that. You know, that I've played with a lot of players that. You know, they're just totally different personalities to me. That's their thing. I think you've just got to do what's right for you. For me, that's the way I want to do it. But it's not a driver for me. But other people, it may well benefit them. But you can only talk from your own personal view, and that's certainly my stance on it. For myself, not for everyone else. I'm not judgmental of anyone else. You know, people make their own decisions. People go their own path. That's just my path.
Yeah. So how would you deal? Like, how do you deal with mistakes? So. To be fair, there's not many. You're not a goalkeeper that makes many mistakes. But if you did make a mistake, how would you deal with it? How do you deal with making a mistake?
I think it starts probably a long time before that happens. Actually, you know, as any young goalkeeper will tell you, it's not easy. It's not easy making mistakes. No one wants to make mistakes. But I think for me, a big turning point for me was looking for this thing called acceptance mentality, where you accept that it's not always going to be right. It's not always going to be good. You know, and I've had people in the past that have viewed that this is almost like it's a negative, almost like you're sort of saying, oh, it's going to happen. Well, to a degree, I understand where they're coming from. But for me, if you know at some point you're going to get it wrong. So if you start out before it's happened, away from all the emotion of it, sat here today, telling myself that at some point you're going to concede a goal that's going to be your fault, it's going to cost you a game. Fine, that's on the table. You know where that's at. So when it happens, all of a sudden you don't get that panic, you don't get that worry, don't get that fear. Yeah. You just get, it's happened, right? What do we want to do now? So if I put that on the table, that accepting at some point it's going to happen. Okay, it might happen at some point. What do I actually want to go and do? What do I want to go and do in my performance? Well, I want to do this. I want to be making saves. I want to be alive. I want to be in the right positions. Try and get everything right. And you're striving for the positive rather than worrying about the negative, if that makes sense. And for me, that was a massive turning point. So straight away, it allows me to focus on what I want to do. Yeah. And then if it does ever happen, when it has happened, I can almost inside smile at, there it is. Right, reset. And it's easier for me to reset rather than if you don't do any work pre on it, as in if you don't work on how you're going to be or let it sort of just happen, then all of a sudden it's like, what's happened there? You know, it's sort of real problem. And straight away your focus isn't on the game or what's happening. You know, I think the only thing that's important at that point is how you react for the rest of that game. You know, you can't change it at that point. So that helps me just have that immediate switch of, okay, happened, calmness, let's get back to it.
Yeah, 100%. As you said, like you can't change it. There's nothing you can do.
No.
It's like arguing with me dropping my phone now and saying the phone shouldn't have dropped when the phone's already dropped and smashed on the floor. There's nothing you can do about it apart from move forward and move on. And I spoke to Martin Brennan. Yeah. So we spoke about this, and I'm like, there was this great book, and I tell every young player to read it. It's called Loving What Is by Byron Katie, and it's basically loving what's happened and accepting it, because we're either arguing with the past or arguing with this version of the future, and it's, as you said, just going back to now and accepting. You're gonna make mistakes. It is what it is, and that's a beautiful way to look at it. If anyone gets anything from it, it is that, like, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to make mistakes in life. You're going to make mistakes in every area because you're human. That's what happens.
Exactly,
you deal with it and you learn from it. You learn from it. What can you learn from it to go forward rather than thinking, well, I should have done this. Next time, make the mistake, learn from it, and then you'll get better. Make the mistake, learn from it, and then you get better.
Yeah, I totally agree. For me, it requires tools, though. It requires the skills to do that. I don't think you can just say to yourself, when it happens, forget about it, because you're probably not in the state to just forget about it. No, you know, it's like
years and years of work.
You have to know. You have to find that what works for you that's going to deal with it. You know, that acceptance mentality. So, you know,
how long would you say it took for you to get it?
Yeah, a long time. You know, I was probably I was probably sort of 24, 25, 26 at the time when I've got to that point, maybe even 27. I'm still and it doesn't ever go away, but you just get stronger and better at dealing with it. I think that'd be the honest answer to it. But it's like that pink elephant. Don't think about the pink elephant. You think about the pink elephant. It's you can't just say it to yourself. You need to find the tools and skills that you require to deal with it. That's just that accepting of it's not going to go right all the time is something that is ingrained in me now, and that is probably the biggest factor in what helps me deal with things that don't go right.
Yeah. So have you ever suffered from like a loss of form? So have you ever I don't know if you have. If you have, how did you deal with that?
I'm sure there's plenty of people that would say yes, so we'll go with yes. I think that's more difficult because, I think that's one of the fears of when you make a mistake is compounding it by another mistake, especially in goal, which can be easily done. You've seen plenty of examples of it even this season where, something doesn't go to plan, and then it might not go to plan for the next couple of games, the rest of that game, whatever it is. And you want to try and avoid compounding errors, of course, but you're not actually in fully control of it. I always talk about this. Like, it's one of those things that you can only actually do everything you can do. Some things you're not in total control of. There's other factors involved, there's other players. So, again, it's probably... Again, I'm sure there's people out there thinking, "Oof, you're not in control of it." Well, I'm a believer in you can't go out before a game and go, "We're going to win today."
Yeah.
Because you're not always in control of that. You can only do everything you possibly can to win that game.
You're only
everything
in control
you possibly
of
can.
yourself.
Yeah, exactly right. So, I think to try and stop or avoid. In fact, no, I don't even look at it like that. Let me get that right.
Go on.
I try not to look at it like I'm stopping or avoiding a bad patch. I just try and perform well, and it stood me in relatively good stead. Of course, there's been times when I've not performed well in a couple of games on the bounce, or maybe two or three games. But I start each game looking for the positive, not worrying about the negative. So I think that really is a big thing in finding consistency of performance in a positive way, and probably even though I don't look at it like that, avoiding bad spells, if you like.
Yeah. Have you ever let a situation off the pitch, like, has it ever affected you on the pitch? So, like, when you've got something big going on at home, and then during the game, has it ever popped into your head, or has it ever affected your game?
No, I don't think so, really. If I'm honest, I don't think so. Probably because of what I discussed earlier about that little sort of mental routine that I do on the morning of the game, or sort of 5 hours before kick-off. That sort of doesn't allow for that, really. At that point, you're fully switched on, so no matter what's going on, no matter what's happening, everything else is irrelevant, to be fair. So that, for me, puts me in that frame of mind. So, yeah, I can't think of any times where that's really cropped up, and that's probably... and a big sort of positive for that routine, really. It doesn't allow for that to happen.
So that's put you in the right state, and you found that just switches you.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, and I've been doing it for a long time. I've been doing it for probably 10 years plus now, and I've not missed a game with it. Every game I've played for the last 10 years, I've done that routine, slightly in different forms, but literally every game I've played.
And how long would you say that takes?
About 20, 25 minutes.
And is that done at the ground or at home?
No, I tend to do it at home. I like to do it in my own space, or if we're in an away game, hotel room. That can sometimes be. That was one of the challenges at the start, finding the right place and the time to do it. For me, I started doing it earlier, a bit later on, maybe 2-3 hours before kickoff. But by that time, you're sort of getting a bit more. There's a bit more going on. It adds the stress with the time. So I've taken it a bit earlier over the last few years, and that just diffuses any time issues. So yeah, that's how it goes.
Cool. So being like Burnley captain, do you find has that changed your game? Does that make you more vocal? Do you find it's changed your game? Does it matter if you're captain or not captain?
I wouldn't say it's affected my actual game in its
Is it out or more outside the game? So you feel like you're
mentoring?
I'd say
to a degree, yeah. I think I spoke to a few people when I was given the armband. I was, of course, an absolute honour, a responsibility that I wanted to do justice, really. And I spoke to a few people, and Gary Neville was one of those people who was the captain at United for the end time when I was there, just to get his advice. He said, and I remember the first thing he said was, best thing you can do as captain is be in the team and be playing well. And I think what he was getting at by that is don't let the armband take away from what you're doing as an individual, which is vitally important. And it can do, if you're not careful, it can act as a distraction. So that was something that I was very acutely aware of early on, especially is not letting any of the captain sort of role take away from my performances. So try to almost separate the two. And yeah, I've tried to be authentic in how I am as a person. I didn't want to get the armband and all of a sudden be a completely different person the next day just because I'm wearing the armband. I just try to do what I do it well, do everything right. If I feel like something needs saying, to a degree, I try and have a voice at the right time. But I don't like talking for the sake of it or forcing it. I just feel it's when it's necessary and when it's right. And as I say, I wanted to be authentic to myself with that, and stick by what I believe in, and just try and influence for people from that way. And I'd have enjoyed that role. I really have.
Cool. I know you got going. I know time's short, so I've got a couple of questions. Like I always like to finish it on. So, if you could call yourself at the start of your career, and you've got 2 minutes to tell yourself advice, what advice would you give yourself?
That's a good question. Very good question. The first thing I'd say to myself is put the work in. Put the work in. Not that I didn't put the work in, but I put more work in than I put in. Just because I think from what I've seen, it does pay you back. No matter what you're doing in the short term, no matter what's around you at that current time, whether you're playing, whether you don't like your coach, whether he doesn't like you, whether the team's not playing particularly well, you've got to see beyond that. You've got to see the bigger picture and think, right, what's my development journey look like here? Especially as a young player, the biggest thing is developing and evolving all the time. It's not where you start on your journey, it's where you finish. And I think I'd be reiterating that to myself just so it was right at the forefront of my mind about improving every single aspect, because it just keeps you moving forward all the time.
So that's the biggest advice. And what's your biggest challenge right now?
Yeah, good question. I think my biggest challenge right now is this right moment in time, and being in the England squad is trying to make an impact and competing for the shirt. Obviously, Jordan's in the shirt at the moment, and rightly so. His performance has been excellent, but I certainly harbour ambitions to get in that team. I think that's done by performing here these few weeks in the run up to these Nations League games, the semi-final and hopefully the final, and then beyond that, performing week in, week out. I think that's where a lot of the work's done. I think if you can get your performances right there, it gives you a great chance. So that's certainly the challenge that I'm trying to take on at the moment.
And have you ever had a thought about after your career? So have you ever thought about, or it's not even entered into your head, so when my career finishes, I'm going to do... Yeah,
big fat question mark at the moment. I'm hoping it's still a good few years away. So I've been careful not to get too concerned with it just yet. I think from a little bit of like what I've been saying along a lot of this podcast, is I don't really want to take my focus off the performing and playing at the moment. I still feel like I'm getting better. I still feel like I've got a bit to give. So got to be very careful, not taking your eye off the ball. I think that'd be a mistake. However, of course, you've got to be sort of vigilant for that sort of thing, and pick your right times. And I remember at Cardiff when I wasn't playing a few years ago, I did my UEFA B licence coaching, and then more recently when I had the shoulder injury, I did my UEFA A coaching licence, and I've got both of those now. So I've picked the times to go and add some things in. I really enjoyed doing both the licences. I will do more at the right time at some point. So I'll have that in the bag. But in terms of what I want to move into after, unsure just yet.
To be concluded. I'll get you after your career ends. Few years yet. 10 years. How old are you now?
Just turned 33.
Oh, I got loads of time as a goalkeeper. Got loads of time. It's all good. It's all good. Right, I know you got to go, so wrap up there. So for everyone listening, thanks for listening to that. If you like the podcast, please give me a 5-star review. Rate us on iTunes, Stitcher, whatever format it's on. Tom, thanks so much for coming on, mate. I really appreciate it. So many knowledge bombs. It was perfect. Thank you so much.
Cheers, Rob. And enjoyed it. Thanks very much.
Good luck with the games.
Cheers. Thanks very much.
Cheers, mate. Thanks for listening to the Footballer's Mindset podcast. If you want to come on the show and you feel like you can add value and spread the reach of the show and help others, please contact me at rob@thefootballersmindset.com or hit me up on Instagram @thefootballersmindset. And if you want to improve your game by 50% without even stepping onto the football pitch, you can visit www.thefootballersmindset.com/improve your game for your free download. I'll see you next week.